Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open on an empty street in New York City with a police captain's wife walking their dog late at night. As she passes a manhole, the titular monster reaches out, dragging Flora into the sewers along with her little runt too. Nearby, the fashion photographer George has shifted his focus to Manhattan's homeless population for his new derelict collection. That's too bad for his girlfriend Lauren, who's a glamour model that he met during a photo shoot but isn't the kind of bum that he needs. They have a happy relationship despite George relocating them to this crappy apartment featuring vistas of filth and groaning sewers. Now that it includes his wife and furry friend, Police Captain Bosch takes notice of the surge in missing homeless people recently. He gets frustrated by Chief O'Brien's insistence on dropping the case, so he visits the local homeless shelter himself to find out what's up. Shepard runs the soup kitchen and says that some of his smelliest of customers have just poof disappeared into bloody thin air. They lived in the sewer like the Val who cried wolf that says so many crackpot things that nobody takes his eyewitness account seriously. Shepard says that all the undergrounders are now packing weapons to defend themselves, so the police better be careful out on the streets. The Queen of Bums, Mrs. Monroe, got arrested while trying to steal Officer Crespi's revolver and remains silent on why she did it. She calls George to pay her bail, so Bosch has an officer tail the stranger who came to town right as the homeless began disappearing. Monroe got his number while George was taking photos of her friends, who the officer never finds because he just gives up the moment they go off-road. He wouldn't be able to keep up anyway as she takes them through a labyrinth of winding subway tunnels to reach her home. The homeless scatter, but the lady knows that George is one of the good guys and prevents Hugo from bashing in his skull. The gun was meant for her brother Victor to defend himself after one of the monsters took a bite out of his leg down to the bone. Meanwhile, Bosch is trying to get information out of Shepard, but he's skeptical to talk to police as he suspects a larger conspiracy. It's only when Bosch reveals that the woman snatched at the beginning was his wife that he's willing to spill the metaphorical beans. Shep is convinced that the government's nuclear program is behind the disappearances, as he found the boot from a radiation suit in the sewer. To support his claim, they also find a Geiger counter which begins to act up as the two hear a roar echo down one of the tunnels. We jump to George returning home to the wonderful news that Lauren's pregnant, and they immediately start discussing the alternative. George just says that it's not his career that she's throwing away, and they celebrate the fetus getting to live or something. Later that night, when a businessman stops at a phone booth with his granddaughter, we get our first real look of the creature. It snatches him up while the girl is left alive as a witness, but Crespi just accuses the 6-year-old of maliciously lying for whatever reason. At least Bosch believes her and argues with O'Brien to get him a meeting with somebody from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. He takes Shepard along with all of his evidence, and they try to include George since he probably knows something about the homeless people. Currently not home, they break in for whatever reason and somehow find the photos of Victor's bite amongst all of his crap. They bring all of it to a meeting with Bosch's superiors and Mr. Wilson of the NRC, who clearly know more than they're letting on. It all just washed down the sewer, they claim, so Shepard threatens to take everything to the press and storms out of the meeting none the wiser. Remaining for answers, they reveal to Bosch a folder titled C.H.U.D and say that it stands for Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers. He pretends like the creatures are a newly discovered species, and we see that the bums are pretty every man for themselves. They take Bosch to see a C.H.U.D that died in the sewer from a gas leak, and we get a cool shot of the face in the captain's visor. Since the nuclear company's in charge, he argues with Wilson over how to best deal with the threat, with Bosch wanting to go in with flamethrowers. They try this approach with a cameraman following the team and don't care if it's monster or homeless, they just go around corners firing. Fortunately, an unseen number of creatures slaughter them before they roast some poor person, so our group must come up with a new plan. Wilson suggests sealing the tunnels to fill them with methane, and if anything goes wrong it'll only be a small area of the city destroyed. Bosch is worried that gassing the tunnels could drive the creatures to the surface, so he returns to the soup kitchen to warn Shepard about the plan. Despite this being ground zero for the C.H.U.Ds, the saintly man has hobos to feed, so he remains to make sure the flames don't go kaboom. Throughout the movie, a local reporter named Murphy's also been trying to solve the case and talk with George about what's going on. He's relentless and calls George at home, so the photographer leaves Lauren alone to show Murphy the secret way to Bumtopia. The reporter suddenly turns into Detective Dan, but his whole character was created just to get George down the sewers before being eaten by a C.H.U.D. Shepard has also had a random side character trying to keep him quiet for the government, but it hasn't gotten violent until now. When Val flees the sewers, you know things are getting bad, but our mystery man kicks him in the face, breaking the poor bum's neck. He locks Shepard in the basement, whose only way out is by going deeper, but at least he has his device to detect radioactive C.H.U.Ds. It doesn't last long as he drops it, alerting to the presence of a nearby creature, and Shepard comes across their communal gathering. He spends his time evading the C.H.U.Ds while George, now armed with Murphy's gun, comes across the top half of Hugo. He's been eaten by Victor, as I guess the bite transformed him like a zombie, so George shoots the rabid man to save his own life. The sister thinks he just murdered them both, but Shepard finds them and knocks Monroe out, as we don't have time for this. C.H.U.Ds are making their move on the city, starting with a diner where they massacre 2 policemen and all of the other patrons. Wilson arrives to take control of the blood-soaked crime scene along with dozens of police and reporters as the secret finally gets out. Meanwhile, Lauren finds a trapdoor in the basement and investigates the creepy noises like a good horror movie should. She locates the remains of Bosch's dog and runs back upstairs to take a shower after, of course, leaving the hatch unlocked. The drain clogs as a C.H.U.D crawls out of the sewers and Lauren tries to deal with the first problem but just gets a face full of blood splatter. No idea why, but she's suddenly clean in the next scene and acting like nothing happened while watching a report about the diner. The banging on the neighbor's door doesn't get much reaction out of her as the landlady and probably child are eaten off screen. When Lauren finally pops her head out, she comes face to face with a C.H.U.D, so she retreats back into her apartment to call the cops. She somehow cuts her own phone line, but it doesn't matter as the police that do arrive are immediately taken out by the creature anyway. It breaks into Lauren's apartment, who thinks that sewer monsters can't see in the dark, leading to a frantic scramble for survival. She hides in George's darkroom, then blinds the mutant with chemicals before taking up the razor-sharp sword that every model has just lying around. When C.H.U.D bursts out of the room, it just freezes, allowing Lauren to admire the beautiful craftsmanship done by the makeup team. She beheads it in a single swing of the display piece before taking the dead officer's patrol car and going searching for her man. When George and Shep reach the manhole, they're locked inside as Wilson parked a truck on top intending to kill them in the cover-up. Searching for another way out, they stumble across crates of radioactive C.H.U.D, which really stands for Contamination Hazard Urban Disposal. The government has been secretly dumping chemicals in the abandoned subway system for years, and the homeless people have transformed. The mutants have recently resorted to coming to the surface in order to feed, so Bosch blames Wilson for getting his wife killed by these things. He learns over the radio that they got in contact with Shepard and George, who are still in the sewers, but located the remains of the flamethrower team. They've used the camera to reach the outside world with the truth, but with Wilson already starting the gas, they struggle to make it back to the manhole. Bosch confronts Wilson about the government cover-up spearheaded by his department and demands the keys to move the truck. Intending to protect the secret, Wilson pulls a gun, but the captain just knocks him out and takes the keys himself. He moves the truck enough to let George and Shepard out, but is shot in the back by Wilson, who he probably should have taken the gun from also. Willie then gets in the truck and tries to run over the boys as Lauren arrives at the scene, unnecessarily putting herself in more danger. Our story's hero Shepard takes Bosch's gun and must have had lessons because he shoots through the windscreen, hitting Wilson in the chest. The truck veers over the open manhole, igniting the methane and blowing Wilson up along with anyone else unlucky enough to be in the tunnels. George and Lauren joyfully reunite while Bosch survives with a bullet through his chest and tells Shepard, "Good shot." The government's crimes are exposed, but the city's still left to deal with whatever C.H.U.Ds didn't perish in the sewer fires. And the movie ends.